The wind whistles across the plains outside Strides town as a small drift bike hums by. A small herd of six-legged bovines lift their heads, long stems of brownish-red grass hanging from their mouths, watching the vehicle pass. It's gone in a handful of seconds, and the herd returns their attention to the meal in front of them. On the back of the drift bike, Tashin Vorel hunches over the controls, goosing the engine as he crosses the open plains. Strides town looms in the distance, as much as a small farming town can, and Tashin squints at the stack of buildings. The drift bike covers the distance in a matter of moments, and he powers it down on the outskirts. There are a few people wandering around outside of a large building labeled Strides Goods and Services. A handful of farmers with wagons full of fruit and grain are unstacking crates into piles just outside a roughly drawn white square. Tashin grabs his bag and slings it over his shoulder before heading toward the building. When he walks in, there's a small crowd in here already. A queue has formed to the desk, and he finds his place in it. There's chatter amongst the assembled crowd, people excited about leaving Strides and making for the big city. When it's his turn, the attendant behind the desk barely spares him a second glance. "Business?" they ask. "I'm looking for transit to Devonshire," he replies. "As long as you don't mind cryo or sharing a bunk, you're in luck. We got a ship coming in that's taking on passengers." "I don't mind sharing a bunk," Tashin says. "Excellent." The attendant taps a few things into the quick screen in front of them. Name and reason for travel to Devonshire. Tashin Vorel clears his mind and focuses on the story given to him by his superior. "Luden Sarton. I'm a mechanic. Been working on harvesters. But I want to try and get into ship mechanics. So I figured Devonshire is the place to go." The attendant says, "Scan your queue." Tashin complies, and his name and work history fill the quick screen. The attendant files it and says, "All right, you're good to go. Ship should be here in a moment." "What's the name of this ship?" The attendant sighs and switches to a different screen. It's called the, I've got it here, the Howlin Wolf. Outside the office, Tashin walks back over to his bike, which has drawn an admirer, a young farmer in dusty overalls, who's practically hovering over it. When the farmer sees him approaching, he backs away, but Tashin waves to him. "You're interested in the bike?" he asks. The farmer shrugs and says, "It's cool. I've always wanted one." "Make me an offer," Tashin says. The farmer's eyes go wide. "For this? I couldn't afford it." A rumble fills the air as a ship begins its approach toward the landing zone. Tashin points at it. "I just bought passage off-world, and I can't take the bike with me. Make me an offer." The farmer consults his queue, an ancient-looking block that displays a very small holographic screen. I've got 500 rue, but that's easily worth 50 times that." 500 rue it is. Tashin decouples the command strip from his queue and transmits it to the young farmer. The young man's eyes widen, and he transmits the rue to Tashin's account. "I don't even know what to say. Thank you." Tashin nods and says, "Watch the drift repulsion on the left side. It has a tendency to be a little soft. Enjoy it." He walks away toward where the other passengers are gathering. The ship is close now, hovering over the landing zone, and slowly descending into place. The wind kicks up and dust fills the air. Tashin pulls his goggles down so he can watch the ship. It's a mid-sized transport with no signs of weapons or really any other defenses. A pretty basic transport with enough cargo space to haul some transport without being too weighed down. As the ship settles into its landing zone, Tashin smiles. It will do perfectly. No one would suspect a poor mechanic from a backwater world like Strides. Once he's in Devonshire, then the real work begins. Welcome back for another episode of Errant Adventures, the solo actual play podcast where stories are told at the speed of dice. With me, Steve Morrison, your game master and solo player. Now come on, let's grab the dice and see where our story goes. Welcome back for Chapter 10 of Book 1, Meridian. Last time, the Howlin Wolf emerges from the celerity conduit in the Alcatel system, a system with a handful of gas giants and one planet with a breathable atmosphere. They spool up the astrodrive and set course for Strides. En route, they encounter the Eclipse, a fellow trade vessel returning from Strides to the conduit. By good fortune, there are no major issues on the planet and no pirates in sight. The ships exchange greetings and pass each other by. In the hospital, Sejana is visited by Inspector Hallow, who informs her that Kelavar Rin has been released and has safely departed the system. She's been transferred to Sejana's case and has identified her attacker as another liar. Sejana suggests that GenCorp hired him to get revenge, and Hallow doesn't disagree. Sejana then asks the inspector what she knows about Verdant Consulting. Back in the Alcatel system, Einar contacts Finn, the broker of Strides goods and services, and makes arrangements for the shipment to be removed. He then arranges for 18 tons of apples to be loaded on board, as well as for 15 passengers in basic accommodations and 13 cryo-frozen low-berth passengers to travel with them back to Cassida. The ship approaches landfall and sees a crowd of people waiting for them. So as Ayati brings the Howlin Wolf into land on this open stretch of brownish-red grass right outside the outskirts of this town on the planet Strides, Einar is looking out the viewport and can see this gathering of people, about 28 people all gathered together kind of in a separate area. And there are some individuals who look somewhat official, like maybe they work for Strides goods and services, who are kind of ushering those people back as the ship settles down onto the planet. There are also what look like groups of farmers with crates, and Einar can see that there are a lot more farmers and a lot more crates than they have room for. And he can only assume that there are probably other ships scheduled to arrive to pick up some of these goods. So as the Howlin Wolf settles into its landing spot, Ayati begins to power down the ship and turns to Einar and says, "Well, should we go and say hello and see who our passengers are that you've gotten for us?" "Yes, I think we should." So they're going to go to the boarding ramp and they're going to look out over this group of people. And they see approaching the ship a large man in a well-kept suit. And he's kind of shielding his hands as the last little bits of dust are starting to settle down from the landing. And he waves a hand and says, "Hello, you must be Captain Stargleam. I'm Finn, the broker here. We spoke on the comms. Welcome to Strides, our beautiful agrarian town." Einar steps forward and shakes his hand and says, "It's good to be here and nice to meet you face-to-face, Finn. We have a number of tonnage to unload, so if you don't mind, we'll get the crane working and start unloading that stuff." "Of course, I've got my men over there," and he points off to the side where there are a handful of people in the Strides goods and services garb who are waiting next to a couple of really old and really beaten up drift trucks. Einar nods and enters a command on his queue, and the top part of the ship cracks open where the cargo bay is. And a crane arm extends out from inside of the ship and begins to lift out crates and begins to move them and set them down over by those trucks. Einar goes through that process and then he looks up at Finn and says, "You've got some passengers for us, I understand. Very happy that you could find some people who were looking to travel back to Devonshire." "They're over there, and once we've got everything loaded, then we can get them on board the ship, and you can begin making your trek back. How is Cassida? It's been a few years since I've been over there. I think it's probably about time for me to make my own trip back that way, but business here is busy. It keeps me occupied, and I don't want to stray too far. These locals here need as much supervision as possible." Einar nods and says, "Of course. Well, Cassida's fine. Everything is as normal as it can be in this strange world we find ourselves in. But, yes, you should probably visit." And he kind of looks awkwardly at Ayati, who chuckles and says, "Yeah, Cassida is doing just fine. In the wake of everything, it's nice to have the Grand Duke and some of the stability that his court brings to our system. I'm sure, even the Alcatel system out here can feel some of the repercussions of that, just knowing that there's a power nearby that can keep you all safe." Of course. We have no troubles out here. I mean, a few pirates now and again, but they don't tend to come down to the planet. They just prey on ships coming and going. Hopefully you don't run into any of them. We didn't on the way in. I'm sure we'll be fine on the way out. Now, let's get this work done. So they continue to unload the Howlin Wolf of those goods, and once everything's unloaded, the Strides Goods and Services folks load up the crates of apples, and then Einar approaches this large group of people. He stands in front of them and says, "Hello, my name is Captain Einar Stargleam of the Howlin Wolf, and I understand all of you have purchased passage to Devonshire aboard my ship. I'd like to welcome you and just say that while it's a short trip, we do our best to make sure that you are comfortable. That being said, we do not have a steward on board, so we are a simple crew. We make our own food and share communal meals. So you're more than welcome to join us for a communal dinner on our trip back. And we'll make sure to settle you all into the rooms and the berths that you have paid for. And we'll get you to Cassida in an efficient and timely manner. All right, let's start coming aboard." And he's going to gesture to them to start approaching the ship. We know that there is an individual who is going by a pseudonym who is boarding the Howlin Wolf. What I want to know is, do either Ayati or Einar get some sense that there might be something weird going on here? To determine that, they are both going to roll recon checks. And this is basically going to be impossible for Einar and Ayati because they are both untrained in recon. So they're going to be taking a -3 to this. And it is an intellect roll. Ayati has an intellect of 1, which is going to make this a net of -2 on this check. And I'm going to say that this is going to be very difficult, which is 12 plus. She is basically not even going to be able to pick up on any deception, but I'm going to roll it anyways, because if she gets more than 6 below the difficulty, then maybe there's some additional complication that arises. So here's Ayati's roll at a -2. 10 minus 2 is an 8, which is a failure, but it's only 4 below, so that is not an exceptional failure. Einar also has an intellect of 1, so he's also rolling at -2 on this. So here we go. Wow, 11 minus 2 is a 9. Both of them just get an average failure. They are standing at the boarding ramp. The first group of people that comes on board are these people who have paid for berths inside of the ship for some of the staterooms. There are 15 of those people, and they are various ages and various species, mostly humans. There are a couple of Haldren. There is also one Lupanian, which are these like tall dog-like creatures. And this particular Lupanian has dark black fur with speckled gray around his muzzle and around his eyes, and seems to be a little bit older. As they're coming on board, Ayati is standing there with this manifest. Somebody walks up and she says, "All right, I'll take your name." And a Haldren, male Haldren who seems to be in maybe his early 40s, says, Zerdin. Zerdin? All right, well, I'll show you to your room here. It's going to be this way. She proceeds in and gestures to a room. She goes back. The next person comes up, and this is a young human woman, maybe her very, very early 20s, and she says, "Ash Tuavir?" Ayati looks up at her and says, "Oh, goodness, you're beautiful. How you doing?" Ash blushes a little bit and says, "Oh, thank you. I'm fine. Eager to get to Davonshire." "Oh, all right. Well, you've come to the right place. The Howlin Wolf is a fantastic ship. We'll get you there quite quickly and efficiently." And at that, she kind of like looks over and winks at Einar, who just shakes his head. And then she takes the young woman in and shows her to another room. And then a couple more people come through, and they are filtering them through to the various staterooms. And then this human man who is in his mid-30s approaches, and Ayati says, "All right, name?" And he says, "Ludin Sarton." "I've got you right here." "Well, it looks like you're a mechanic, eh?" "I am, yes. I'm looking to get into ship mechanics. That's part of the reason why I'm going to Davonshire." "Well, if we have any issues, maybe you can watch Einar. He's our captain, but he's also our mechanic and engineer. And, maybe you can pick up some tips from him. Come on right this way." She's like, "Well, you actually lucked out on this trip. Looks like you're going to have the solo berth because, well, we had, with 15 of y'all, we had one person who got lucky and is going to get their own room. So that's going to be you. Now, here's the thing. This is my room. I'm not staying in it right now. It'll be your room, but it's my room normally. So I'm staying in a friend's room. That's too much information. Well, look, I'm just saying, like, don't mess it up too much. It's my room." Ludin looks at her and says, "I will make sure that I leave it as clean and pristine as I find it." And he walks in, and it's mostly clean. She tidied up, but there's some clutter along the walls as she's kind of like shoved some stuff into a corner and tried to haphazardly cover it with a blanket or something like that. And she says, "Well, don't judge me too harshly. I'm pretty busy flying the ship. So, enjoy your trip." While this is going on, Einar is taking the people who are going into the low berths, which are these cryo stasis pods that are located underneath the hull, kind of tucked into the belly of the hull of the Howlin Wolf. There are 13 of them, and he's going to gesture for them to take up their berths. And in this group, there's a family of 4, these 2 parents and 2 kids. The kids are probably no older than 10 or 11 years old. They're looking at these cryopods and are looking at their parents and are like, "Do we have to go in there? I don't want to go. I don't want to go into that. It's scary." And the parents are like kind of trying to ease their minds. Einar walks up and says, "Hey, kids, it's really great. I've spent so much time in cryo sleep. It really is just like that. It's just sleep. You're going to close your eyes. You're going to fall asleep. And then when you wake up, you're going to be on a whole different planet. It's really a very peaceful way to travel." They look up at him, and the one says, "I've heard that sometimes things can go wrong with these, and people don't wake up." And the parents are like, oh, no, it's okay. That's not going to happen. That's not really how it goes. Einar crouches down and looks at the kid and says, I promise you, you're going to be all right. I've got a grandson about your age. He was scared the first time he got into the cryo as well. But it's all right. He got right through it. He had a great night's sleep. And he woke up refreshed. He'll be great. Trust me. I'm the captain. I mean, that's how you know you can trust me. And the kids kind of like wipe some tears away and say, can we get a tour of the ship? And the parents are like, we have to go into the berths now. And Einar looks around and says, we've got time. I can give you a quick tour. Really? Okay, yeah. And they're really excited. And so Einar takes a few minutes and walks this family around the ship and then back to the cryo chambers and says, all right, you've had your tour of the ship. Now it's time for sleep. If I'm being honest, I wish I could climb into a cryo chamber myself and go to sleep. But I'm going to stay awake and make sure the ship gets to its destination safely. You kids will be all right. And the kids get into the cryo chambers. They activate and the doors close. They begin to go to sleep. Once they're asleep, the parents turn to Einar. The mother says, thank you for that. You really didn't have to. No, it's all right. I know what it's like to be a scared child traveling in cryo. My parents left Trend when I was very young, and I had to sleep in a cryo sleep all the way to Cassida. And, well, I know what it's like. Well, thank you again. Of course. Well, I'll see you on the other side. Once all of the people are in their cryo berths, Einar and Ayati seal up the ship, and a few hours have passed. They lift off from Astrides and begin to make their way up out of the atmosphere and back towards the Celerity Conduit. As they're making the return journey back to the jump point, I think we should roll another encounter. And this time, it's just going to be the regular roll. So I'm going to roll a d6. If I get a 6, there will be some sort of space encounter. I rolled a 6. Okay. So let's see what kind of space encounter they have. D66. Here we go. 52. Garbage ejected from a ship. Interesting. What kind of garbage is it? Let's go ahead and go back to our action and theme oracles from Starforged and roll 38, eliminate, and 72, reputation. Eliminate reputation. Okay, so they are maybe an hour away from the jump point when Ayati is looking at the scanners and says, Einar, there's something out there. What kind of something, Ayati? I mean, it looks like it's just scrap or debris floating in space. And it's in our path towards the conduit, right on the flight path. Well, we both know what that might mean. Let's be cautious and do some extra scans. Maybe it's just some random cargo. So Einar is going to make an electronics sensors check, which is a routine check. He doesn't have the sensors specialty, but he does have electronics. It's at 0 level, +1 for his education. So just run on this. Got to get a 6+. Of course, I rolled a 3, +1 is a 4. So he does not get any specific scans on his scanner. So I think what he detects, this is what he gets as just the base level scanning, is that this debris that's floating out there is clearly some cargo containers that were loaded onto a ship on Strides. But they look as though they were jettisoned, and then there's scoring on them from weapons fire. So that's just the baseline. They see that. Einar spools up the scanners and begins scanning around, looking for any signs of pirate activity, because that's the most likely explanation. We're going to ask the Oracle, are there pirates still in this area? I think there were at some point in the last few hours. Are they still in this general vicinity? I think it's 50-50. So 50 or less will be a yes. They are lucky. 61 is a no. Einar scans the area and does not detect anything. And he says, well, I think we might be in luck. Not picking up anything. So if there were pirates that came through this way and forced a ship to abandon their cargo, it doesn't look like they're here anymore. I wonder if it was the Eclipse. They were the only other ship that we came across on our way in. Yeah, that timing would match up. It's concerning, but nothing we can do about it. Doesn't look like there's anything worth salvaging. Let's just get to the conduit and get back to safety. All right. And the Howlin Wolf will adjust its trajectory slightly to avoid this small field of burned and scored cargo containers that are just floating through space. And they continue to make their way towards the Celerity conduit. Now, as we shift back to Davonshire, when last we saw Sejana, she was in the middle of a conversation with Inspector Hallow, and she had asked Inspector Hallow if the inspector knew anything about Verdant Consulting. And I'm not going to even roll on the Oracle because Inspector Hallow is a part of Cassidon Security, is an inspector, and I am certain that she has come across Verdant Consulting before. So we're just going to roll on the action and subject tables to see what she knows about Verdant Consulting. So here we go. 95, threaten. That's a good start. And the subject is 36, fear. Threaten, fear. Okay, this is how I envision it. Inspector Hallow looks at Sejana and says, Verdant Consulting? Yeah, I've heard of them. They are incredibly dangerous. They're killers. Yes, I gathered as much. Wait, why are you asking about Verdant Consulting? I recently came across some information, and it indicated to me that Verdant Consulting was hired by GenCorp to take care of their comm leak. Okay, whoa. Inspector Hallow leans back and says, this changes everything. Verdant Consulting is a group that is run by a woman named Sybil Clementine. She is, well, in some ways, she's a lot like you. She's former Imperial Special Service, but she doesn't seem to have a conscience. About 3 years ago, Verdant Consulting popped up as a firm that offers its services to corporations to make problems go away. That you already know. The thing about Verdant Consulting is they are very hard to pin down. I've been trying to build a case against them for the last year, but every time I get close, every time I find someone who can talk about their activities, something happens to that person. They disappear. They end up dead. Verdant Consulting, they are the people that you call when you want someone who is without remorse, without concern for life, without concern for legality, without concern for anything other than getting the job done and making sure that it can't be traced back to you. Sejana nods and says, "That tracks with what I've been able to uncover so far. I think I might know who hired this liar to assassinate me." Yeah, I'd say that is a pretty good likelihood. And also, if Verdant Consulting are the ones that put the hit out on you, there's a very good chance that they'll come after you again. There's no reason for Clementine to not keep coming after you until you're dead, even if her clients at GenCorp are behind bars or under investigation. Everything I know about this woman, everything I have been able to piece together is that she is incredibly ruthless and incredibly focused on completing her mission. Sejana reaches for her cue and activates it and says, "Clementine, Sybil Clementine. You say she was former Imperial Special Service?" "Yeah. That name is not familiar to me. It's not unheard of for me not to know someone in the service. It was a large enough organization, but it seems unusual to me that I would not know anything about her. Let me do some digging, and maybe I can come up with some more information." Look, everything that I said to you before about wanting to work together and if you're going after the people that tried to assassinate you, that is completely different now. If Verdant Consulting are the ones who sent that assassin after you, well, we need to move. We need to get you out of here because there's a very real possibility that they will send someone to this hospital to finish the job. I won't be so easy to kill a second time. Maybe not, but you're still weak and you can't fight back right now. Sejana smiles, that cold, knife-like smile, and says, "Again, I'm not as defenseless as you might think. Look, I get it. You're a technomancer. You've got crazy void powers, whatever. I'm going to make a call and see about getting you transferred to a different hospital under a pseudonym. Just hang on. I'm going to step outside for a minute." So with this information in mind, I think we should roll another Oracle check. And we should ask the Oracle, is there someone coming to this hospital right now to kill Sejana Lushale? And based on everything we just learned, I think it's likely. So we're going to say 75 or less is a yes. 27. Inspector Hallow gets up and removes a small earpiece from their queue and tucks it in their ear and enters a sequence and steps outside. 2 minutes later, the door opens and a nurse walks in. They walk to the end of the bed and activate the quick screen and look over it quickly. Sejana looks at them and says, "How's it going?" The nurse looks up at her and says, "Fine. How are you doing?" Sejana says, "You're new. I haven't seen your face before." He looks at her and says, "I just came on shift. I was off the last few days, but this is the start of my week. You know how it goes." Sejana smiles that knife-like smile and says, "I do know how it goes." She reaches over and begins to adjust surreptitiously a dial on her gauntlet. The man steps around and says, "Looks like we need to change up this restorative. Get something else flowing in there for you. Help you recover a little faster." He starts to fiddle with the machines and he pulls from his pocket a small translucent bag that he begins to attach to the device. Sejana looks up at him and says, "I have a request." Of course. What is it?" And she looks him in the eye and says, "If you survive the fall, tell Sybil Clementine I'm coming for her." Thanks for listening to Errant Adventures. If you enjoyed the show, please spread the word. And if you want to support the show directly, leave me a review or support me on Patreon at patreon.com/errantadventures. You can also buy me a coffee at ko-fi.com/errantadventures. If you want to interact with me, my handle on all the socials is @errantsolopod, or you can email me at errantsolopod@gmail.com. I also post short fiction and campaign-related materials on my website, errantadventurespod.com. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you in the deep, liars.